Hello and welcome to another edition of the SCP Podcast. I'm Jacob Engelskirger, the co-host of the 2024 SCP Conference in Austin, Texas. And today I'm here with Christina and Amanda, presenters of a workshop, a pre-conference workshop called Inclusivity Begins with the Self, using groups to identify and explore white supremacy in leadership. Amanda and Christina, could the two of you take a moment and introduce yourselves?
So I'm Amanda Weber. I am a psychologist, a counseling psychologist by training. I co-own Face Race Consulting with Christina. My background is I was trained at Boston College in the Institute for Promotion of Race and Culture with Dr. Janet Helms. Anti-racism has been a focus of my work since I started college, like way back when I was 18. And under the tutelage of Dr. Helms, I really sort of dived into white racial identity and allyship and helping white individuals move along in their own sort of anti-racist journey.
Amazing. Wow. Well, thank you. And Christina, it'd be great to hear a bit about you as well.
So, hi, my name is Christina Douyon. I'm also a counseling psychologist. Amanda and I actually met in graduate school at Boston College under the tutelage of Dr. Helms and the ISPRC. And my background has also always been issues of like race and culture, but particularly how race impacts one's sense of self, one's sense of community, and how that intersects with other identities such as being immigrant, being woman, and things of that sort. So that's really come forth in all of my research and the work that I do with Amanda.
Amazing. Wow. Well, it's so great to have you both here. I feel so lucky to have this time with you. I'm so excited for your workshop. I hope that I get a chance to attend myself in between my conferencing duties. Yeah, so the workshop is called Inclusivity Begins with the Self, using groups to identify and explore white supremacy in leadership. And I can imagine some of our listeners and viewers here might be wondering, my goodness, this term white supremacy, is this what I think it is, and why does this have a place in your title?
So I feel like when folks hear white supremacy, they think white supremacists and maybe the Klan and things that feel really evil and bad. But white supremacy is really an ideology, right? It's a system and a way of being that really governs almost everything we do in America, right? It's an ideology that white people and the thoughts, feelings, and actions of white people are superior to Black and Indigenous and people of color's thoughts, feelings, ideas, and selves. And that superiority or belief in white superiority, it extends even beyond race, but into other things like sexuality and gender. But it's really this idea that there's only one way to be, and that way is the best way, and that way is normal. So when we talk to folks when we talk to folks and they push back like, well, I haven't had any privilege and I don't know what you're talking about. It's this idea that you're normal. That's what white supremacy kind of comes down to, that you are normal, that you are center, and that everything else is a deviation from you. And the reason that white supremacy is harmful is because we can't all be deviations, right? We can't all just be trying to be one way, because then we're punished for that. We're criminalized for that. We're pathologized for that. We're seen as different and other and problematic. And that's the reason why white supremacy is something that we talk about in our work, particularly in leadership, and particularly with organizations.
Wow. Yeah. So are you saying that it sounds like you're saying that in our society, whiteness and white ways of thinking and being are seen as normative?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, you can see that in some of our like more pop culture type of things, right? So obviously there's been some pushback on that, but so for instance on TV, most of the main actors and actresses have historically been white individuals, and now there's just some push, right, to make that change or shift that along. But in the past, when white actors or actresses have been the majority of what we see on TV, that is an example of this is normal. This is what you're expected to sort of fit into, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it also strikes me too that when we're talking about privilege, the people with it don't have to see it, right? Like that's the privilege of the privilege.
Right.
Exactly. It's moving through the world just thinking this is normal and I am as I should be, and everything else is a deviation. I even think about issues of like hair, right? So my hair is out, it is curly, it is big. I have been asked if this is like a type of protest. Am I trying to say something?
Wow.
It's just how it grows out of my hair. But Amanda has never been asked if their hair is a protest. So for those who cannot see us, Christina, I am Black, Amanda is white, right? And these are ways in which normalcy and white supremacy and privilege show up, where the way that you do your hair is just considered normal, or it doesn't mean anything. It's not a conversation. But Black hair is a conversation. It means something. There's regulation around it. There's policy around it. There are actual rules around who can't wear locks in what types of jobs, whether it's considered professional or not. That lets you know where white supremacy exists, right? That there's policies around the way I can and cannot wear my hair, and there's social meaning assigned to it, rather than this is how it grows out of my hair, and that's normal.
Wow. You've given me a lot to think about, both of you, already. I'm also wondering, and thought some of our listeners and viewers might be wondering, if you could tell us a bit about how groups in the workplace can be used to identify and explore white supremacy, and how white supremacy is related to groups and group dynamics and leadership development in the workplace. I'd imagine some people might be thinking, we're always, I'd imagine some of our listeners and viewers might be wondering that. Yeah.
Well, I actually think we need to take a little bit of a step back before we can explain why groups, why the workplace.
Okay.
And that is because we need to also understand how is white supremacy sort of being employed in everyday life. So there are a few quote unquote norms that have been identified through research. And some of that is around like perfectionism, individualism, etc. I'm not going to give away our whole workshop because, I want you to also come to our workshop. So
for sure.
Yeah. But my point is that there's a couple of norms that operate and through white supremacy. So if we apply that idea that there are norms that are operating through this ideology, groups are the perfect place to begin to identify where those norms are coming out within relationship with you and I, if we're sitting in a group, let's say, and it helps us have a place to individually reflect on the ways that maybe I am employing white supremacy or these norms of like perfectionism, individualism.
Wow. Okay.
If I were to add to that, one of the norms that Amanda's referencing would be like intention over impact. So I could talk to you one-on-one, right? I could say, hey, Jacob, when you did this thing, it hurt my feelings. And you're like, oh man, Christina, I apologize. And we have a good chit chat and we move on, right?
Right.
A one-on-one conversation. But in a group, it's not only about self-reflection. It comes down to what's actually happening in the space, right? So we're having a conversation that is showing you who you are. And then we can talk about what's actually coming up. So when the intention over impact norm comes up, generally someone says something and I might say, hey, that sounded like it was really racially motivated. And in response, the person says, but I'm not racist. And I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that.
Right.
At this point, we're taking care of your intention. You've decided that what you meant was more important than the impact of what you said and did. In the group, we can have that conversation because it came out, right? Because if it's one-on-one conversations, you might paint yourself in the best way possible, right? these one-on-ones, we're our best selves because we're so thoughtful, we're so reflective, we're so clear on who we are. But in group work, we show up as we are. And that allows us to actually have a thoughtful, meaningful, and change-inspiring conversation. Because once we see ourselves in front of others, we can really reflect, like, what does this mean? How does this align with my values or not align with my values? How does this uphold white supremacy? How does it not? Or even those who aren't acting. I always enjoy the person who says nothing the whole time. And they're like, but I didn't say anything.
Right.
And I'm like, who told you that silence was neutrality? Because while you watched harmful things happening, you said nothing to interrupt it. How does that uphold your status? Keep you safe while you watch the harm of others occur. So that's another way in which like group work intersects with white supremacy and why we think group work is so important.
Wow. So groups and group work are a space and a container through which these types of moments where you didn't use the phrase impact versus intent. You said
intention over impact.
Intention over impact. Okay. Yes. Intention over impact. Where when that comes up, that can be examined and examined in a way that can help the person who, defaults to the goodness of their intention to perhaps really own the impact and understand, and I would imagine see the magnitude of the impact on the person they're speaking with. Really powerful.
Yeah. And I think the way that Christina and I approach this work is from a place of like humanizing, curiosity, trying to reduce shame, right? There's a lot of like shaming and canceling in our culture, and we don't actually believe that is the way that change happens. We actually think that creates a lot of defensiveness and shuts people down. And so Christina and I are coming from this curious, like humanizing place that allows us to really sort of get in there and unlearn and deconstruct the ways in which we've been taught to do things, right? So intention over impact is a way that we've been taught to communicate and like have relationships with others.
Yes. Wow. Well, I realize we're getting near the end of our time here, but I did want to ask the two of you, how will you engage participants in your workshop in a learning process? How do you intend to convey this incredible knowledge that you have?
Yeah, so kind of like the pillars of the way we like to do work is like knowledge, empathy, and action. So we're going to have a knowledge piece. We don't expect folks to come in knowing everything. So we explain what white supremacy is. We talk about these norms. We explain even different types of racism, from individual to systemic to cultural, right? So here's some knowledge piece. Here's what's important to know and understand for context. And then we act. So we actually put people in groups. So we'll have, it'll be volunteer. So don't worry if you're listening. Like, you won't have to do anything you don't want to. It's all consent. The folks will volunteer to be in a small group with us. And we're going to actually run the group as we normally would for about 60 minutes and allow all of these things to come up, right? Here we're taking action, we're acquiring empathy, and we're applying this knowledge live. And those who are observing the group can also reflect on it and talk about what they witnessed and what they would have done or not would have not done. But it's a experiential type of learning, because everyone has read a book that has taught them something about anti-racism, but it's likely your life is the same after that book.
Right.
Here you're in it. You cannot escape it. We're naming what is happening, and we're inviting you to reflect on it, engage with it, and assess it.
Wow. The two of you have already got me reflecting on my whiteness and how it shows up in my relationships and in the workplace. And I'm just so appreciative of the two of you taking the time to join me on this podcast and educate me and others a bit about this topic and about your workshop. This has been such a joy. I look forward to seeing both of you in Austin. I want to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors at all of the different levels of sponsorship. We really appreciate your support. Without you, we could not make this possible. And I will I will see the two of you in Austin.
Yeah. Thanks, Jacob. Yeah. Thanks for having us and talking to us and chatting with us and allowing us to explain what we're trying to do here. We look forward to other people joining us. We promise we're not scary. We're actually quite lovely. So come on in, come into the workshop.
I second that, the lovely part.
If anyone listening is thinking, I don't know if I should do this workshop, it means you should. And we welcome you and we look forward to meeting you. And thank you so much, Jacob.
Thank you both. Take care. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.